And hello, everybody. I'm Sam Beckinsale, and there's the beautiful Cat. And we are here to talk, as ever, about many things, but mainly domestic abuse and domestic violence. What's been on your mind today, Cat? I know you've been chomping at the bit.
Well, it's a big societal issue that we're talking about. It can't be solved in a few podcasts.
No.
However, at the same time, and the topic itself is overwhelming.
Yeah.
In our societies. So, but there are things we can do as people in our own homes and in our own environments to try to drive things in a better way. So you kind of talked a little bit about that that book you were.
Right. So yeah. So when we. So I don't know about you, but certainly when I was coming out the other side of my experience of domestic violence and abuse, it was trying to get the information that to understand what had happened to me, how I was feeling, why I was feeling the way I was, what the words meant, what does gaslighting actually mean, what does coercive control actually mean. But there are so many resources out there that we can access ourselves, and one, because we often talk, don't we, about getting to the root of it and what us as a society can do. And there was a Remaking Manhood, which is a Mark Green, his name is. And I mean, I don't know a great deal about him, but some of the stuff that he's saying is quite interesting. But there are other Facebook pages and sites, not least your own. But there's another one in the UK, actually, that's really good, that I've only become recently aware of. And I think the sharing of this kind of information between ourselves. So no, we're not going to cure domestic abuse, and certainly bless you. And certainly we're not going to cure it on this podcast. But conversation and communication does, and having a healthy interest in finding information, I think is and sharing information. It's the sharing of information is quite key, which I suppose is what we do. It's how we met, wasn't it?
Right, exactly. In coming onto my page and asking about, hey, I've got this little movie, would you take a look at it? Because I talk to people all over the world about it every day in posts, me and the rest of the team, because it's not just me. But we talk about it all over the world, and it's the same story. And your movie was you telling that story, because as a society, and you bring it up in the movie as well, as a society, we know that hitting is not okay, even though in some countries people are still hit. Women are still killed.
More and more every day.
South Africa. Excuse me?
And more every day, it seems.
Right. And if you look at that big picture, it's overwhelming. And I think when you come out of these relationships, you're overwhelmed.
Yes.
Because of what society has said that these relationships are, be it with your parent or another human being. We have an ideal, and you have grief when you come out of these things.
You have dissonance as well. I mean, you have been brainwashed. Your brain has been messed with, like structurally messed with. So, you know, looking for something, and I think that's why your page, The War at Home, if only someone knew, there was that recognition in when you see things that other people post that really resonates with yourself and goes, I'm not the only one that's experienced this, or that's so close to what I've experienced, that's freaky. But that's, I think, what leads, I suppose we keep talking about education, don't we? And that's, education's the big word for it, but it's sharing information. It's talking about it. It's going, oh, I found this really interesting article that you might want to have a look at. That's just about understanding, I suppose, an element of our society that we really don't like looking at. Understandably, we don't like to know that these people are walking around amongst us very ordinarily.
Right. You know, and we also don't like the fact that you're having to put your needs and thoughts aside as women, because that's taught. So we don't ask the question, how do I feel about something? It was women, we say, oh, how does he feel, or how does she feel, or how are you feeling? Are you okay? And it's totally leaving out the person and how they feel. So us as women are taught not to even think about ourselves, because if we do speak up, then we're asking too much of something.
Yeah, or when we do, you know, when we do stand up for ourselves, somehow we're butch, we're not attractive, we're not. It's somehow not seen as
man haters.
Yeah, and it's somehow not seen as feminine. Well, I actually quite like, you know, I like being a strong woman, you know, physically and mentally, and I think that is in terms of history, I think that is quite a new thing. You know, it wasn't that long ago we had, it was perfectly acceptable. If not, it wasn't even acceptable. There were tribes of female warriors, like, you know, proper fighting warriors. I mean, that's what the Amazonians were. And somehow we've, in a very short space of time in society, we're saying, no, women can't even fight, or they can't even speak. So it's when you think about it in terms of a time span, it's very, very short, actually. So hopefully we can turn that around. But it's all of us communicating and asking the questions, and the whole thing is overwhelming on every level. The mountain that you know, I speak to, you know, frontline DA workers, and sometimes they do just feel overwhelmed by the sheer mountain of work and the seeming futility of keeping going. Not because women are weak and they keep going back and all the rest of it, but because this monster that is abuse is just, it's growing. It's like a fungus that just keeps growing, and somehow we need to cut it off at the root. And the only way I can see that is by us all sharing information. And interestingly, the 16 Days of Activism, the global campaign from the UN, is Unite. And it is about us all uniting from all areas of the globe. And like you saying, about South Africa, we've got people in South Africa, Australia. Hopefully we can get some of them on this these podcasts and chats as we go along. Because whereas it's the same story the world over, there are different things happening in different countries, as we know, like in Belgium or France, they have different laws that are just like, oh my goodness, that's incredible. But like we say again, we can have the laws, but it's how are they implemented? How are things evidenced? How are people actually held to account for these? In South Africa, it's horrific. They don't, Australia are only just getting the coercive and controlling laws now, and that's not even in every state. No, so whereas there's this massive, on the one hand, there's this enormous unity and vast common experience that you cross over the bridge to those that are to hold perpetrators accountable, and there's just this vast disparate difference. So the experts by experience, which is all the survivors, are a massive army, and the more we unite, the more change hopefully we can instigate, initiate, push for, to eradicate this for everybody.
Yeah, society has to understand it, though. You can't fix something if you don't understand it.
I think the thing is, I mean, do you think, I don't know about you, but do you think, because on the one hand, we're not daft. We know what abuse is. We know what it means. I think the bits that we don't quite understand, or certainly I didn't understand, were the tactics and how subtle they can be and how gentle they can be and how drip, drip, drip they can be, as opposed to, I suppose, what we're fed in the movies, of some psycho trying to break down your door with an axe or behaving really oddly. I suppose like the Jeffrey Dahmers of this world, who are quite seemingly ordinary people, but what they do is seemingly, until it is not ordinary anymore, until it is murder, until it is just this huge destruction of another human being on every level, psychologically, emotionally, sexually, spiritually, so when you're culturally, so it's no wonder we find it overwhelming, like you were saying right at the beginning. It is, but it's like anything. You start with one tiny bit and just chip away.
Well, yeah, and it's every day in homes, so it's not like it's a one-time event. If somebody's talking about it, it's not like it's a one-time event, because the fact that they even come forward and talk is huge. Because they don't talk about it because nobody wants to admit that that's going on. So if you can't even talk about it, how are you going to be making it better?
But also, how do you talk about it when you feel that it's wrong? But going back to some of the stuff that we've said, but when society is saying to you, certainly as a woman, oh, well, just give her a bit of a slap. She's, oh, who wears the trousers in this relationship? Why?
Right.
Because you're comfortable saying no.
Right. That's a big one.
Yeah.
That's a big one. Because that if you think about just that word, no, and there's a joke here that's like, which part of no don't you understand? Is it the N or is it the O? Because you'll say no, and then it's like, well, but blah blah blah. The answer's still no, and it's like it's not going through. So
how often do you just say a straight no, or how comfortable as a woman do you feel just saying no?
Well,
I don't
it's
know
a
about you, but it's not something that comes easily to, I have to think about how I'm going to couch that no in a way, and I think most women do this, especially if you're saying no to a man, to couch it in a way that isn't going to offend. Thank you very much, but
then in of itself, the statement that you just made is taking care of somebody else. Because no can be said no. No can be said, let me think about it.
yeah.
And that gives you a little bit of time. No can be said by no answer and you walk away from the situation. People look at those things and say, well, that's disrespectful. Somebody's asking you a question and you just walk away. Well, if your answer of no is going to cause you more problems, then maybe walking away isn't a bad thing.
But do people do those things simply because it's unacceptable to just say no? I don't want to do that. Or no, that's not right for me. No, or just no.
Well, if we
But
go back,
no.
right? If we go back to what you were just saying, and I have to think about how I'm going to say that, it's already problematic.
Yeah.
And we may not even know because we're taught in society how not to say no, not to hurt their feelings.
Yeah, it's rude.
Not to
it's rude
upset
to say
them.
no. Why is it rude to say no when it's not rude to say? If you say something to me, I go yes. That's not called rude. But children are brought up if they're asked a question, they just say no. They're told that's being rude. Why? Why is that rude and yes isn't? It's rude because somebody has when somebody has asked you a question and they want a specific answer from you. So the asking of the question is almost rhetorical. And then you give an answer they don't like. That's when it's rude. And it's actually got nothing to do with, is this something you do or don't want to do? So even when we come down to something as simple as yes or no, even that is overwhelming to figure out. So, the more we talk, the more we prick those
Well, just simply
ulcers.
asking. Yeah, but simply asking the question of yourself. Somebody asks you something, and you say, let me think about that. It gives you some space to be able to think about that. And is that something you truly want to do or not do? And it comes into integrity as well. Do you really want to say no, but you say yes? And now who are you mad at? You're mad at yourself. You're irritated at yourself because you're doing something you can't do. When a simple no would have sufficed. And the acceptance of somebody saying, all right, and figuring out their own irritation with you saying no. About, but we don't talk about that, or we don't think about that. And it is difficult when you're brought up to have to think about how to say no.
Yeah, and I do think it's across the board. I mean, I do think that on the one hand, I do think that when I think about our boys and our girls and how they're brought up, that it's very similar. But at the same time, I do think it's exceptionally difficult for a woman to be able to say no, feel safe doing it, and for it to be an automatic perfectly normal response when they don't want to do something. And I think we've got quite a long way to go until that is normalised for us as women to be able to say, no, sorry, I don't want to drink. No, I don't want to sit there. No, I don't want your attention. No, I don't want you to follow me. No, I don't want sex with you. And for it not to be taken as, you know, and for us as women to not have to do what we do to not offend when all we're saying is no. No, thank you very much.
It comes back to that whole man culture, man box culture thing that you were talking about, right? Because if you do say no, then it goes against the control and the power.
Yeah.
And that's really what that's about, I think.
Yeah.
If you think about that, I don't know. But we'll have another day on that.
We will. We'll have to remember to talk about that. The yes, no.
So that was kind of my no.
That was your no. Or just go on, say it. Mwah.
Bye till another day. Hello. Thank you for watching our channel today. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the bell for any new content and find us on Patreon and your favorite podcasts. We hope we're one of them. Bye-bye.